Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, I'm setting up my microphone. Hopefully everybody just heard that. Happy New Year, everybody. This is Noah from Shortcuts, one of the educators. Today we're going to be looking at working with taxes in Shortcuts. I'm going to give everybody a few moments in case you're still getting your coffee and you're sitting down, hopefully taking some notes. So I'm just checking with my audio right now. If you can hear the audio, on the right side of your screen you should have a button that allows you to see the chat window or to post a question. So if you can hear the audio, go ahead and just say yes, you can hear the audio, or no, or anything actually. I'll be able to tell if nobody can hear me. And I'm checking to see has anybody asked a question or put anything in the test. I'm going to type a message. Can you hear the audio? Okay, it looks like some people are joining us. Pedro Rafael. So let's see. Audio, microphone is on, microphone is working, that's good. And of course, this is being recorded. So if you're going to join us later, that's okay because we are going to have this available on our website after the presentation. So without waiting much longer, let's actually begin. So again, my name is Noah Valladolid. I'm one of the educators with Shortcuts. And the first webinar of 2019, we're going to be discussing working with taxes in Shortcuts. So if this is your first webinar, where you have some rules. So this webinar is going to be relatively short, about 30 minutes. We'll leave some time aside for questions and answers. My microphone is on, everybody else has been muted, but you do have the ability to send questions, to post questions on your toolbar. So afterwards you can type in your question and I can try to answer it. Of course, your speakers must be on to hear this webinar. We will have some time for questions at the end. And if you have questions after this presentation, you're always welcome to ask us on our Facebook page or to email the educators. And you'll get our contact information at the very end of the presentation. So what are the learning outcomes for today? The help desk has been inundated with a number of calls because, as everybody knows, it's the start of the new year. And if you're in a certain state or certain county or certain region, you may have new taxes that you have to set up. So instead of having the help desk field a million different calls, that's why we created this presentation. So no two tax questions are the same. So that's why we're going to cover a few different things. We're going to look at how to create a tax, either for products or services. So if you're brand new to Shortcuts and you don't quite remember, or it's been a while since you had to create a new tax, we're going to discuss that. And then if you have a brand new law or a brand new rule in place with your tax board, that certain products should actually have a dual tax. And this happens in some states, it happens in some provinces if you're in Canada. You actually have to have two unique taxes that you apply to services or products. And then if you have existing taxes, how do you remove them in Shortcuts? So there is a process you have to follow. And then going forwards for the rest of 2019 or even for the next few years, how do you set your default taxes? And of course, the last rule, how to apply certain taxes to specific products. So let's actually begin. So how to create a new tax? So you first have to ask yourself, am I going to create a tax for my products or am I going to create a tax for my services? So we're actually going to go into Shortcuts right now and do a live demonstration. So I'm going to log into one of my servers and I've already created some taxes, but if you're following along or if you're taking notes, to get to the place in Shortcuts where you're going to set your taxes, on the right side, at the very bottom, you're going to the button that says Setup. And once you're on the Setup button, you're going to the Configuration button. Once you're in configuration, on the left side, you're going to go to the button that says region. And under region, you're going to tax. Now, in my demonstration database, I actually have two unique taxes. I have a retail tax and a service tax. So how did I create these? Or if I have to create a new retail tax, how do I create a new retail tax? Now, this is a mistake that a lot of people make. If you go to retail tax and you press the new button, you're actually going to add more tax, or you're in some cases doubling your tax for this specific retail. The best thing to do is to go to the top of the screen and click on the word business. Then press the new button. So I'm going to create a brand new retail tax for 2019. My old tax was 6.75%, and my new tax is 7%. So I'm going to click the word business and press new. So Shortcuts will ask me, please give this tax a name. So I'm going to call it my 2019, oops, it would help if I could type it correctly, 2019 product tax. So you could call it retail tax, you could call it product tax. And on the left side, Shortcuts is going to ask me, what am I supposed to apply it for? You can only apply it to one thing at a time. In this case, this is whenever I sell a product, so it's product sale tax. Once I press done, Shortcuts will now ask me, what is the value of this tax? And to also give it a name. So my description, again, I will call it my 2019 retail tax. And Shortcuts will ask me, how much should the tax rate be? In this case, I'm going from 6.75% to just 7%. Once I press done, you will actually see that I have a brand new tax, a 7% tax called my 2019 retail tax. So this is different than the original one, which I just labeled retail tax and it was 6 3/4. So the same rule applies. If you're in an area, in a state or a county that requires a service tax, then always start at the top, choose the word business, press new, and then create your new tax rate. So we'll label it 2019 service tax. And I will apply it whenever I sell a service. And my 2019 service tax, it used to be 3%. It's now going to be 3.2%. Done. So I have two new taxes. And this is for 2019 and presumably for the next few years. So this is how you create a tax. So let's go back to the presentation. Oh. So then, when you need to set a default tax, moving forward, from this time until you change your taxes again, how do you set your default taxes? So on the same window that we were on, I'm going to jump back into Shortcuts. On the right side, you have a number of defaults. So right now, I'm looking at the old tax rates, my old service tax, my old retail tax. So I have to change it and tell Shortcuts, from now on, whenever I add a new service or a new retail product, always apply my new tax rate. So by doing this, I'm not confusing the system and having the system try to apply two different taxes because I told it specifically, nope, only use the 2019 for products or for services. Now, oops, I'm going to exit Shortcuts. I don't need to have two versions running at the same time. So that is how you set your default rates, whether it's a product or a service tax. So this is where things get a little bit more complex. In some states, in some regions, you may actually have to apply two taxes. In some provinces in Canada, for example, they have an HST tax and a GST tax. So one tax is 7%, one tax is 5%. So the total is going to be 13%. So they actually have to show it on their certain tax reports. How much was GST, how much was PST? In this case, perhaps we have a tax, and this was a call that we had recently. In their county, if you have a business that sells alcohol, including barbershops, salons, and spas, you now have to apply a new tax to any alcoholic beverage. So normally retail would be 6.75%, but now if you have an alcoholic product sale, it's 6.75% plus 0.25%. So a total of 7% tax. But the county needs to see it broken down. And this is also going to help your tax preparer to see how much was this particular county tax and what were your totals. So to apply this new tax, to create it, how would it work? So let's go back. And we're going back, going to exit shortcuts here and launch my regular shortcuts. So I'm going to create, instead of just a 7% tax, I need to break them apart based on my county and based on my state. So again, at the very top, I'm going to choose the word business and I'm going to press new. So the description is going to be 2019 alcohol tax. And I will apply this tax whenever I sell a product. So everybody just saw me create a 7% product tax. And I'm creating an entirely different version of that product tax. So I'll press done, and Shortcuts will ask me, give this a description. So this is two taxes I need to apply. The first is my 2019 state tax. And my state tax was originally 6.75%, as it's been for the past few years. So right now, my alcohol tax just has one rate, but my county needs me to add 0.25% to the original retail tax. So I'm going to click on my 2019 alcohol tax and press new. So I'm adding a second tax into this number. So this one will be my 2019 county tax. And that is 0.25%. So the total is still 7%, but the county is going to take that 0.25%. So there it is. My alcohol tax actually consists of two different taxes. My 6.75% state tax and my 0.25% county tax. So this is how you actually create two taxes that are supposed to add up. In this case, add up to 7% for reporting purposes. So I hope that makes sense for everybody. In a moment, I'll show you how to apply that to specific products. So I'm back to the presentation. So we've been able to create a new service tax, and we've been able to create a new product tax. And we've even been able to create a new tax that requires two unique percentages. So the next question is, how do you remove an old tax rate? This is probably something you've tried to do, and Shortcuts told you, you cannot delete this tax rate. So what exactly do you do to the old taxes in case it's time to make a change? So remember, in Shortcuts, very rarely would we ever advise you to delete things. Instead, you make them inactive. And in this case, it's the perfect example, because at the end of the year, you need your reports to be correct. So if you tell Shortcuts to delete your taxes, and then you tell Shortcuts to try to report on your taxes, then Shortcuts will say, there's nothing to report. So then, of course, you get in trouble because you don't have any tax information at the end of the year. So how do you work with that? How do you make your taxes inactive? At least your old taxes. So we'll jump back into shortcuts. So the way I advise it is, think of taxes like a string tied to your products. So you can't delete them. You can't break the string, but you can untie the string and then put away the taxes. So for this case, the old retail tax, 6.75%, if I had ever used this on any product in the past, then shortcuts will not let me delete it. But I can make it inactive. So I'm going to work backwards. The first thing you should do, if the old retail tax was your default retail tax, then I would actually make it exempt or choose a different product tax or a different retail tax. That's the first thing I would do. So that's the first part in untying the knot, untying the string. The second thing that you do is you expand your list of the taxes that you have, and when you find it, you can edit that tax. So normally you can't change it once it's been used, but if you click the main line, the retail tax, and you go to edit it, then you'll notice it's grayed out. I can no longer change what it's applied to, but on the right side, I do have the ability to make it inactive by unchecking this box. So I could even do one better. I can call this retail tax 2018 or retail tax old or retail tax do not use. So then I can make it inactive and press done. So now Shortcuts has removed my old retail tax. It didn't delete it, it just hid it so that I don't confuse it with any other tax. And I can do the same thing with my service tax. I'll make sure that my old service tax is either exempt or selected to my new one. And this is under my default settings. On the left side, I'm going to click on my actual service tax line and go to edit. And now I can make it inactive and even change the name. Do not use. Excuse me for a moment, I have to cough. Okay, I'm back. So I will save my change by pressing done. So now I only look at my new tax rates, my new service tax, my new product tax, and my special alcohol tax. So remember that in Shortcuts, you can't delete necessarily things that have been used, but you can make them inactive. And to properly make them inactive, you have to untie them, in this case by defaults, and by making them inactive on your tax rates. So let's go back to the presentation. And I'm going to tell Outlook that I am doing a presentation right now. So then, one of the steps is, how do you apply a specific tax to a specific product? So in this case, if I have a tax I am only supposed to apply to alcoholic beverages, and this is my special tax that I just created, how do I apply it only to those things? So let's go into Shortcuts one more time. So on the right side, we're going to return to the Setup button. And if you had created a service tax, we're not talking retail just yet, but a service tax, we want to make sure that that new service tax is applied to all your services. So under Setup, you're going to go to the Services button, the button that looks like a handshake. Currently, all of my services are actually at the old rate. Even though I changed the default will only affect new services that I create. To go backwards in time, or not actually backwards in time, but to go back and change the old tax, from the service screen, I'll click on the word business, and I actually right-click on the word business at the top left corner, and this is where I have the ability to change my sales tax. So Shortcuts will ask me, what is my new sales tax? Well, I made the old one inactive. Now, I can tell Shortcuts, whenever I perform a service, always charge that 3.2%. Once I press done, Shortcuts is now applying that new tax to all of the services that I have. So if you notice, it takes a moment, and that's because my service menu is pretty big. So now that I've added my service tax, I have to make sure my retail tax is correct. Now, on the right side, I'll go to the inventory button. And under inventory, I'll click the products button. Now in this case, I would actually do two steps. The first thing I would do is click on the word business and actually right click on the word business and change my sales tax. Again, I will choose my product tax. So Shortcuts is now applying a 7% tax to everything for the point of sale. So once that's done, and in this case it takes a moment because, as the case with most salons, most spas, you may have hundreds and hundreds of different products that you sell. So we need to make sure that the brand new retail tax is applied. Now that that's done, if I had a special tax, an alcohol tax that I only should apply to certain products, this is how you would do that. So Kerastase is not actually an alcohol product. I'll go to miscellaneous accessories. So let's say Model in a Bottle is all of my alcohol products, every beer I sell or a glass of wine. So I can right click on that line, and on my list, I have the ability to change my sell tax. So anything that I sell under Model in a Bottle doesn't have the regular product tax, it has the alcohol tax. And just like that, Shortcuts has told the system that only items in this line have a slightly different tax rate than everything else. So you can do that for a line, you can do that for an individual product, or you can do that for an entire company. So maybe everything under my miscellaneous accessories should have the alcohol tax. I could do that as well. But I'll cancel that for right now and return to the presentation. So this is actually the last portion on setting up taxes in Shortcuts. So now you should now know how to create a tax either for a retail product or a service, how to create a dual tax in case you need to have a breakdown of the unique tax rates in your city, in your town, or in your province. You should now know how to remove an old tax rate. Remember, you're not deleting them, you're just making them inactive. And then how to set default taxes in Shortcuts, whether going forwards, every new service or every product should have this new tax rate. And of course, last but not least, how to apply tax to very specific products or services. So this is the part of the presentation where we remind you all of our previous webinars are available online, and this presentation will be available in just a few hours. And we're opening up the floor for questions. So if anybody has a question, I'm going to expand my control panel here. And on the right side, I'm going to check the questions and the chat window. So Raphael, he said yes, he could hear me. Everything looks good. So the attendees that are joining us today, hey, Freddie's here. Good morning, Freddie. So if you have any questions, on your toolbar, You should have both a question and a chat. So if anybody has a question, go ahead and just post a question here and we'll try to answer it. Whether it's related to taxes or not, that's fine. So we'll give you a moment. You're probably connecting your keyboards right now. Oh, thank you, Freddie. Freddie always with the kind words. Right. But I think anybody that was attending was just trying to figure out how to work with taxes and shortcuts because you might not have had to change it in a few years. So this is always a good refresher. I'll give it a few more moments. I'll check my chat window again. Oh, we do have a question. So something about making a prior product active. Okay. So Freddie has a question. If he had a product that was made inactive previously, how do you bring it back from the dead? So let's see. So let's go back and let's go into shortcuts. So let's say you had a product in the past that you used to sell. Perhaps the company stopped making it, you stopped carrying it, but they decided to bring back the product. When you are in your inventory screen, in your product screen, on the bottom left corner, this is something to remember. Some of you may have it set to show me only retail or show me only professional. I always advise set it to all because that way it's easier to find the things you had made inactive. Once you set it to all, show me all, then click the checkbox to show me inactive. And what's going to happen is that anything that was hidden previously, and I will do that for Olaplex, I'll turn it off for a moment. So anything that was hidden previously, in this case Olaplex says there is nothing under the Olaplex line. That's because I hid it previously, I made it inactive. If I tell shortcuts to show me the inactive, and I open up the Olaplex line, it shows up in gray. So I have to go to the right side and click this checkbox that says active. Once I do that and press done, now Olaplex will be back on my main product list. So that's how we return things if we had deactivated them previously. All right, let's go back to the question window. Okay, so another question. When you make a prior product active and it had an old tax rate, shortcuts will use the old tax rate even though it is not an active tax rate. So, and that is correct. So be sure when you make the old product active again to apply the new tax rate. And that is correct. So Freddie's reminding us, I just brought Olaplex back, but to make sure that shortcuts applies my new tax rate, it doesn't hurt to right click on that company and all of the products under there, change my sell tax and set it to my new rate, my 2019 product tax. Thank you for the reminder, Freddie. Okay, are there any other questions that anybody has? And I'll go through the list again. Any idea where you can find information regarding local taxes? Unfortunately, I don't know if there is a specific website, there usually is a government or a county site that will give you your tax rates. So don't necessarily Google it or just rely on Wikipedia or something. When you want to be sure, most counties, most states have particular tax boards that you can refer to. They have PDFs with breakdowns for your region, your area, what your taxes should be. So that's where I would check. Always check with your county, check with your state. They usually have a web page that has this information and that has the tax board information. Okay. So let's check. Okay, So Freddie's just warning you to make sure that you set your taxes correct if you ever bring back a product. Okay. If there are no other questions, let me bring up the slides one more time. So, of course, you can always visit our previous webinars on our website. You can always ask us questions on Facebook. But if you need to get in contact with the education team, you can always email us, education@shortcuts.net. Ask us a question on Facebook. We will get back to you. And, of course, our 800 number is always available for the help desk in case you just need a hand setting up your taxes or making your older taxes inactive. So thank you for your time. Happy 2019. I hope everybody has a wonderful new year. And this is the start of our brand new webinar series. So thank you for attending, and we hope to see you on the next presentation.